Hi guys, my name is Ram. I'm from Great Learning, and today we're gonna be learning about DevOps, specifically, an introduction to DevOps, right? So, guys, what I'm gonna be teaching you is, a lot of different things that you will need to know to understand what DevOps is, and basically get a good basics framework in your mind. So that what to do when you go ahead for the more advanced stuff and when you actually want to build a career for that, right? So that's why it's an introduction to DevOps. It's for beginners and it's basically going to help them out, right? So before I do begin this session, I want a confirmation from you guys regarding whether you can hear me properly, whether you can see me properly, and whether you can see the presentation properly or not. And while you guys give me that confirmation, and while all that is happening, do leave a comment in the chat. That's how I will know, because I have the chat open next to me. So that's how I know about it, right? So before you guys, before I start the session, I want to show you guys something really cool. It's called, yeah, keep on looking at the screen. It's called Great Learning Academy. Right. So if you're a regular over here, then you probably know what Great Learning Academy is, because you've been watching a lot, and we do like talking about it because Great Learning Academy is a really awesome initiative that we have started. It's a free initiative. Like, you guys might have heard about like other course programs, right, where they give you courses, so you have to pay for them and you get those courses, right? But with Great Learning Academy, that's not the case. You get courses that are completely free. If you look at the screen right now, you can see Virat Kohli over here. He's like, yeah, Great Learning is pretty cool, and Great Learning Academy is some awesome program you should check out. So over here, if you scroll down, you can see all the upcoming live sessions we have on YouTube. And this one is mine over here. You can see my beautiful face over here, and these are all the other trainers. And if you come down, these are all the sessions over here. So here you guys can see we have a lot of, not sessions, courses. We have data science, we have machine learning, we have artificial intelligence, IT, software, cloud computing, and a lot more courses. And these courses are basically free courses that you guys can enroll in and get a free certificate out of that. And that's only if you complete the course. And once you complete the course, you get a lot of different benefits, like you get presentations, code slide, code decks, and everything. And you also get access to quizzes, and you get access to codes that being used. So there's a lot of benefits in you enrolling for these courses, and the best part is that they're completely free. So since they're free, then that means that you don't have to pay anything. And if you're a fresher who's just out of college and does not have a job, or if you're a person who's looking for a new job, then this is exactly the thing you're looking for, because you don't want to spend a dime right now, and you want to learn something, build up your skills, make yourself marketable, right? So this is the perfect place. And it's just not data science and machine learning. We have a lot of different things. If you're a designer and if you want to learn design stuff, we have a lot of courses coming on that too. For now, we have on Photoshop, we have on designing. So you should go ahead and check those out. And if you're a person who likes to learn in Hindi, हमारे पास हिंदी के लिए भी खूब सारे courses हैं. प्लीज़ ज़रूर चेकआउट कीजिएगा उनको, ठीक है? तो चलिए अब मैं देखता हूँ कि आप लोगों ने कोई मैसेज डाला कि नहीं. लेट्स सी इफ यू गाइस हैव रिप्लाइड ऑन द चैट और नॉट. And yes, I'm getting a lot of, well, I'm not getting a lot of replies, but I see Sarat, Venki, and Amit saying yes, they can hear us. That's great. Guys, come on, go ahead and give me that yes or no in the chat. I really, really like when a lot more people can hear me, and, that they are responding on the chat, because that really helps give me the confidence that you guys are actually listening and I'm not just talking to an empty crowd, right? Cool. Yeah, so we see more people coming in, like Yashwan Naik saying yes, and Mohammad Asif also. Great, that's amazing. Now let us begin the actual core stuff. Introduction to DevOps, right? So let's understand what DevOps really is and how it will help us out, right? So let's look at the agenda for today's session. So there are a lot of different things that we're going to cover. Like first, I'm going to cover why DevOps, why do we need to learn DevOps, and why is it such a big deal these days, right? And the second thing I'm going to learn is we are going to learn, not just me, what is DevOps? Like, what is it actually? Like, there's a lot of definitions out there, but what is it specifically, right? Then we're going to go through all the different phases there are for DevOps, and we're going to learn about all the different tools that are being used. Now, this is a really interesting part because there are a lot of different tools that are being used, and they're very interesting to know about what these tools do and how do they help us out. And then, who is a DevOps engineer? A lot of you might actually be interested in just this. You want to know what it is a DevOps engineer do and what is his daily job and everything. So I'll make sure you guys understand that also. And we'll go through the average salaries that are being, given to the DevOps engineers. Don't worry, it's a hefty amount. You will be really happy looking at it, but I'm not going to disclose it just as of now. And then finally, we are going to have a small demonstration where I'm going to teach you guys how to use Git and Docker, together. Now, if we do another session on this, I'll teach you about all the other tools that are also being used. Oh, and I see that the chat has become a little bit more active. We have Surya, Chatira, and Rajesh, Rahul. Okay, so Rahul is like, may I ask you one question? Definitely, Rahul. Go ahead and ask me any question you have. And this is the same for everyone who's watching this, live session. Please ask questions. That really makes the live chat more, lively. And if someone from the chat knows the answer, please go ahead and answer. I may not always get to all the questions. So if you can help one of your fellow audience members out, that's always helpful, right? Okay, so till Rahul gives me the question, I'm going to go ahead and start off with why DevOps, right? So why do we learn DevOps? Now to understand this, I want to ask you guys, like, what do you know about software development? Ask yourself this. The word software development means it is development of software. But what is the software over here? In how we developing it. There are a lot of different things that we have to do in software development. Now, if you guys have any idea in what software development actually is, please go ahead and leave an answer in the chat, right? I'm going to go ahead and straight away answer it, but I would like an answer from you guys also. I want to know what you guys think about it, right? So software development is basically, it is a process where we develop software. Now, it's a very intricate and it's a very complex process because generally when you think about it back in college, if you've done coding and all that, or if you've not done coding, you're from a different background, software is not just like, writing the code and just running it, right? There's a lot of different parts involved to it. And once you get into the whole IT sector, on the software development sector, you really get to know what the whole core or meat of it is, right? And we use a lot of tools and methodologies to improve the software development process, right? So one of the most important methodologies that is being used these days, that has become really trendy, is DevOps. So to give you guys a brief, DevOps is a methodology, right? But we will expand upon it and we'll understand why is it a methodology and if it is only a methodology, right? I see there's a lot of buzz in the chat. Let me just check that out. Yeah, so we have Rahul saying, thank you, sir. I'm not from a coding background. I want to learn DevOps. So can I do? Yes, Rahul, you can definitely learn DevOps, right? So it is not something that you have to be stuck to coding itself. But the thing is that if you want to learn DevOps, you need to have some basis about coding because DevOps is about software development and software development has coding. So you need to know coding, at least, the basic fundamentals of it and how do they use it in software development, right? But that's not to constrain you if you don't like coding and you have to be there. In DevOps, you won't be doing coding majorly. What your job will be. All right, let me expand on that when we actually get to that part. Okay, let me see what the other things people are asking. So we have sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name. We have Chelimila saying, DevOps means development and operation. Well, you are exactly right. It is a part of development and operation taken together, somewhat like that. And Rahul is again asking, or how much is it tough to learn DevOps for freshers who's not from an IT background? I'll be honest with you, it is a little bit tough because you have to know a lot of computing basics also with that, right? But that's all right. It's not a problem. You slowly learn things. You start with baby steps. You learn first small thing and then you keep on moving forward, right? Okay, so now let's get back to why DevOps. So before DevOps as a methodology was being used these days, we used to use something called waterfall model. Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of you do know what waterfall model is. And if you do know, please tell me in the chat if you know about it or not. And how do you know about it? So tell me in the chat and I'll try to look at the things you know. So till then, I'll just tell you guys what waterfall model is. So waterfall model is a model that is used for development purposes. Now, it is not regularly used these days. Obviously, it is used, but it used to be very popular back in the early, when the whole software scene was coming along, like in the 60s, 70s, and 50s, and even 80s and 90s, right? In those decades, it was being used a lot because that time the market wasn't really big, and since the market wasn't really big, you didn't have a need for constant release of products. So what waterfall model is, it's basically a set of phases. Let me explore those phases for you. We have requirements, designing, implementation, testing, deployment, and maintenance. So first we go to requirements, right? So requirements phase is the phase in which you basically look at the requirement from the client. Maybe the client is the government, or maybe the client is a hospital, and they're like asking you to make a software. So what do you do in that case? You look at the requirements that you have. So the first requirement is basically to make a software. So you decide what are the resources you need for that software. So you list down all the requirements you have, and you list down all the resources that you will need to build that, basically do those requirements, right? So that is the requirements phase. You're basically doing all the planning, and then you come to designing, which is again a part of planning, but not exactly. In designing, you're basically designing how your software will be, the whole architecture of it, and the time you will take to make it, and all those things will be done in the designing phase. Then you come to implementation phase. Now, in the implementation phase, basically you're implementing the thing. So you're doing the whole work over here. So that's when you start the work. You start writing the code, and you start basically making the different units of the software, right? And then you come to testing phase. So once you're done writing the code, you test the code and you see if it's up to the mark or not. You see if the requirements are fulfilled or not. So let's say one of the requirements was that you need to have, a feature that allows you to calculate the average salaries of all the employees. It's a government software. So in testing, you will make sure that it calculates the proper average salary of everyone or not. If it does not, then it's bust. It's not doing the job it's supposed to do. Then we have deployment. Deployment is where you take the software and you put it in a particular location so that the people who want to access it can access it. Let's say that you are a team that is making the software. Now you've made it in your own computers, but your client is the government. So you have to go to the government servers and you have to upload the software over there so that they can start making use of it. So that is basically like deployment. And that's in very simple terms deployment, right? And then you have maintenance where you maintain that software, right? That is pretty simple to understand. So this is your basic waterfall model, and it's a very long and arduous process because you have a lot of different phases over here being involved, but then the product you get is of very high quality because you are thoroughly going through all the steps, right? So if we go through it, basically in the early year of software development, when it was just coming up, waterfall model was used. And it is a very standard model that was used in a lot of different fields also. So it's not something that software development, came up by itself, right? All right, so let's move on and let's talk about what are the drawbacks of it. So let me just list down all the drawbacks over here. All right. So with waterfall model, there were a lot of drawbacks, and that's why it's not used very regularly these days. So first, let's say it's long development life cycle, which is obviously true. You saw there were so many phases, and software could, take a lot of time to make. Now these days we make software in smaller chunks, but in those days we didn't make them in smaller chunks. We just made them as a big whole and gave it to the software client, right? To give it to the client. So that's why it had long development life cycle. Software could take like 1 year, 2 years to make, right? And till that 1 year and 2 year period, there was nothing to show for. Like these days, you can make some part of the code in 1 month and show the client, but those days the client had to wait like a long time, right? And long development life cycles aren't very error friendly, right? I mean, error friendly as in they have a lot of errors generally happening, and then it's difficult to backtrack on them because once you understand, once you make something and once you delivered it after like 1 year, and you have to you understand from the client that this is not what they wanted, then you have to go all the way back to the starting of the phases to make any changes you wanted to make, and which is not exactly possible, right? Because if you want to make those changes, it is difficult to do so starting all over again. I mean, you can do it, but it's a very difficult process. It's a very long process, and you don't really want to do that. And then no finished product till the end, which is true because you're not able to show the client anything because you're taking such a long time to make the thing. You're making it in one bulk. It's like saying, like take an example of your mom making fries for you, or you making fries for your mom. You will basically make it out in batches, right? First batch is like 10 fries and you give it to your mom, and then you make like 30, next 15 fries and then you give it to your mom or your family, right? But what if you decided to give it all the fries in one batch? So you just kept on, waiting for all the 100 fries to boil up and then get fried, not boiled, fried, and then you give the 100. So when you were giving it in batches, they were able to eat it while you were still cooking. But here, they have to wait while you cook the whole thing, right? So that's an example. Then tougher to plan for. When you have long development life cycles, it's very difficult to plan for them because real life variables come in. And when I say real life variables, I mean things like what is happening, what are the real issues that we were not able to see in the requirements phase, what are the risks that happen. If some risks happen, then we have to backtrack a little bit. So all of these get interconnected, right? So it's easy to plan for like 1 week versus 1 year. And if you plan regularly, you know that. And then high risk. So from the client side, as well as the person who's developing software also, it's very high risk because you're investing a lot of capital and a lot of effort into it. So if something goes wrong mid and you have to backtrack, then it means you have to invest a lot more capital, a lot more money into it, which is again a lot of risk because you may not have that capability. If something goes wrong and you don't have the budget for it, then boom, it's all gone, right? So these are the different drawbacks that waterfall model really has. So to overcome this, software development tried to come up with different better methodologies, so newer methodologies. And you might have heard of some of these. Go ahead and let me know in the chat if you know some of these, okay? So we have Agile. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have heard of Agile. Agile is now being used in a lot of different places. Then you have spiral model, then you have extreme programming, then you have feature-driven development, then you have lean methodologies. So all of these methodologies are there, basically that are helping you, basically make up for the mess that waterfall methodology was, right? So these are some of the new methodologies that are being used today, and waterfall is the older one, and DevOps is part of these new methodologies. So that's what DevOps is. It is a methodology that we use these days to make sure that our software development process is as efficient as well as as smooth as possible, because we don't want any errors. We want everything to be automated. Let's say that you develop software for like 1 week, 2 weeks, right? What would be better? A lot of your code is sitting manually and fixing a lot of the different things, or manually taking the code from one server to putting it on another server, or you want it to be automated. If you automate a lot of these things, you reduce the amount of money you spend and you reduce the amount of time you spend, right? And the less humans involved, the less there are going to be human errors. Obviously, in the starting, we have to put in a lot of effort to build the whole system. But once we build the system, we want to automate that system. So that's why we use DevOps as a methodology, right? Now, before I talk about what is DevOps in more detail, I'm just going to go through all the things you guys have been saying in the chat. All right, so we have Preetham saying, can I get a well-prepared playlist? Preetham, please go ahead and check out our whole 10-hour course that is on DevOps. So if some of you guys are interested, we have a whole 10-hour video on DevOps. Or I would recommend this, first understand through me. This is a live session. So if you talk to me, I will talk back to you. And that's a video. You won't be able to do that, but you will get a very, very good idea of how everything works, right? Because this is a 10-hour course that I have prepared and I put a lot of effort so that you guys will understand. So go ahead and check that out. Just type Great Learning DevOps. Once you type Great Learning DevOps, that's the first video you'll get. Or it's a 10-hour course, so you will find out what video it is. Yeah. Or I'll ask the moderator to moderator, please put it in the chat, that DevOps 10-hour course, so that people can click on it. So Anurag is asking, hi Ram, is DevOps course started in Great Learning? Yes, Anurag, just as I said right now, we do have a DevOps course. It's a 10-hour course. Please go ahead and check it out. It's a really good course. I vouch for it, right? And I recommend watching this live session before you start that because you can ask me questions also. Uday saying hello, hi Uday. Then we have Arush asking, what we should do to get more chance of hiring if you're coming from a different background. All right, Arush, good question, very good question. So to get more chances, there are a lot of things you have to do. First, you need to apply a lot more. So if a person from coding environment is coming and coding background is coming, he might only have to apply to 10 jobs. You who's coming from a lot more separated background, then you have to apply for 100 jobs, right? And to get hired first, people really generally look for experience. Don't worry, that's not a problem. You can always do internships and you can do junior associate or associate level jobs, right? So there are a lot of junior level DevOps positions and associate level DevOps positions. Now, these aren't the fancy positions that you might think of when you associate with DevOps, but these really give you experience, and I truly recommend them. You have to apply, you have to start from small, but then once you put all the effort in the starting, you get those really nice DevOps jobs, right? So you need to get some experience, right? So DevOps is a big thing. It's like handling the whole company's software, right? So people don't generally like giving it to a person who does not have any experience. They like to give it to people who have experience. So first get some experience by some internship or some junior or associate DevOps level job, right? And you have to apply a lot. You have to apply to 100 companies. Cold apply, like just look at companies' career pages, go ahead and apply from there, because a lot of times they won't do it on your job applying websites like Naukri.com or Monster Jobs, right? Or idea indeed, sorry. You can apply from there, and I would recommend applying from there also, but I would recommend doing cold applies, where you go to the company's website, look at the careers, and then apply from there. So that way you can apply even more, and if you can get in references, that's really good, because references get some level of priority, right? Hmm. So Kalicharan is saying yes, he does know about DevOps because he has learned it in SDLC, that is Software Development Lifecycle. Yes, so you do know about that. All right. So Kalicharan is asking, which phase does DevOps come in? So the thing is, DevOps won't come in any other phase, because DevOps itself is a methodology. I'll explain, because DevOps itself has its own phases, and we will talk about those phases. Don't worry. So data quest studio is saying going great. Thank you. Kalicharan, V model, prototype model. Yes, there are some other models also. Shivangi is asking, can you explain all the new methodologies? Sorry, Shivangi, I can't explain all the new methodologies because it will take a lot of time. I can tell you about Agile right now, because Agile is one of those methodologies that is being used a lot. It's like in Agile, what you do is you have a small planning phases, like you have multiple sprints in Agile, where one sprint can be of 1 week, second sprint can be of the second week, right? So you're putting the sprints in particular week intervals. So that way you're developing software in smaller chunks, and once you develop the software in smaller chunks, you give it to the client, you get some feedback, you get feedback from your own team, and then you improve upon it in the next sprint. So that's how kind of Agile works, right? Mohammed Ashraf is asking, hi, is scripting language mandatory for DevOps? AWS Azure is mandatory. Please, okay, thank you. All right. So, Mohammed, I will say that scripting is a part of DevOps. So you do need to know it. Don't get scared. It is something very interesting, and you will learn it slowly. So it's not a big problem, right? So, now when you ask about AWS versus Azure, it really depends. You can go for AWS or you can go for Azure. Personally, I use AWS because I've been acquainted with AWS. I've been using it since I started learning about it myself. Right? I know Azure also, but I like AWS. But then that's a personal preference. When you work in a company, they can have their own personal preference, and there your personal preference won't work. There you have to go with what the company is asking, right? So it doesn't matter. Just learn some cloud technology. You learn AWS, you'll automatically find it easier to shift to Azure, because the concepts are same. It's just that you're using different UI and some different principles on different levels, right? So it's not a big problem, right? So if it's personal, you're asking me which is better, I would say AWS. All right. All right, so we have Prasham asking, I can't see any course material PDF link is given from you. It says register. Should I have to register where I can study material? Yes, Prasham, what you have to do is once you click on the link, right, once you get the click on the link, that is get PDF DevOps intro, it will ask you to enroll. Once you enroll, that is when you get all the access. So don't worry. You don't have to be forced into anything. Just enroll. And once you enroll, you get the learning material. All right. All right, so let's continue. What is DevOps? Let's see the time. Okay, I'm a little bit behind, but don't worry. I like answering, and it's not about completing the whole thing till the end. It's about helping you guys out, right? So what is DevOps? So first, I want to talk about how DevOps is a way of software development. It is how you develop software, right? So DevOps is a way of software development as well as it is the values and principles that are imbued. So DevOps is not on the technical level itself, but it is also on the cultural and philosophical level. It's how you handle your team. If you're a DevOps engineer, then it will be your job to making sure that everyone in your development team understands, and in your operations team, in your testing team, understands what the working environment you're trying to instill in others, right? They want to make sure that you're developing software in a certain way. They're trying to make sure that you understand that you play an integral part to the whole software development process. Your job is not done when you just write the code and you just push the code into your Git repository or whatever. It's not over there. It's going to be till the point where you deploy the software, till till the people who want the software get the software. You have the responsibility till there. Then it is also a methodology that allows you to structure whole software development process, right? And it is also a set of tools. So you can see that it is a lot of different things. Now you may be asking, what is it specifically? That you never was sure of. It is, if you want to say what DevOps is, it's basically a conjunction of all of these things put together. It is a way of software development. It is a certain set of values and principles that you have to follow, that you have to keep in mind when you're developing software. It is a methodology that will help you structure your software development process, and it is a set of tools. Like, it is not directly a set of tools, but it has a lot of tools that are being used in this particular field that you don't use other places, right? So it is a mix of a lot of these different things. Okay, so this is what your DevOps is. Now, if you want to go to proper definition, the name DevOps comes from development operations, as someone pointed out in the chat. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name, but somebody pointed it out in the chat that it is both, it comes from developer and operations. The DevOps bridges the communication gap between the software developers and the IT team. So let's say there's the developers and there's the operations team. So operations team is basically the one that was responsible for deploying before. But now DevOps does a bit of both. It takes the dev from developers and it takes the ops from operations team, right? So that's how you get DevOps. Cool. I hope that was interesting for you. And the proper definition is DevOps is a set of practices that combine software development and IT operations. It aims to shorten the system development lifecycle and provide continuous delivery with high software quality. DevOps is complementary with agile software development, and several DevOps aspects come from agile methodology. So what they're saying is the same thing as I told you guys. The whole aim is to make sure that the software that we are delivering is of the highest quality. It has to be of the highest quality, right? That's the whole aim of DevOps. And how do we do it? We'll learn about that. But it also is complementary with agile, right? How is it complementary? You use DevOps with agile. Now, a lot of different values and principles are there in agile also, and a lot of different things are there in agile, like sprints and all. You use both of them together, so they're both complementary to each other. So a lot of times you won't just see people using DevOps, you'll see them using the combination of different methodologies, and a lot of times that's going to be agile. So you're going to have agile, you're going to have DevOps, and both of them are going to be used together. All right. So let's move on. Let's talk about the benefits of DevOps. So once you start implementing DevOps, right, there's a lot of benefits that you're going to see. And this is if you're starting your own company or if you're working for someone and they don't have DevOps, then these are the benefits you'll see when you start implementing it for them or for yourself. You'll see that there's a productivity rise because a lot of people will be dedicated to doing what they're supposed to do and not be stressed about doing something else. A developer doesn't have to do anything in testing. A developer doesn't have to care about what's happening to the code once he's pushed it. Now, he does have to care about the end result, but he doesn't have to concentrate on the whole process of it because the DevOps engineer has already set it up in such a way that the code is going by itself. The developer doesn't have to push it himself, right? In the starting, when he pushes it to the repository, yes, but after that, the whole process of building the code, of testing the code, of deploying the code doesn't have to be concern of the developer. Excellence. So when you implement DevOps, you see that the excellence of your product increases. It just shines like a ruby. It becomes very crystal polished, and that is the whole aim. When you're working in a corporate environment, you want to deliver the software that is of the utmost or the highest value or the highest polish there is. And DevOps helps us that. And as a company, you will definitely see a lot of returns coming in. That returns is basically a lot of you have invested. You will see the ROI of that, return of the investments, right? You'll see a lot of profits also. And on the technical level, also, you have a lot of benefits, like you have speed and rapid delivery. So compared to older stuff, you will see a lot more speed and rapidity when you're developing and delivering the software. And you will see robust security. So there's a whole separate part of DevOps called DevSecOps. You don't have to think about it too much, but it is solely for concentrating on the security aspect. And implementing DevOps gives you a layer of security that you might not have previously seen. And the last thing is better scaling. Now, to understand what scaling is, please go ahead and let me know in the chat if you know what scaling is, because I want to understand this. Because a lot of times I explain scaling and people just don't know what scaling is, right? So let me know in the chat. I am seeing Venki asking, I am from Unix background, so am I able to learn DevOps? Venki, you're a perfect person to learn DevOps because you already know Unix. So you have some idea how Linux works, how some other operating systems works, right? Like how Windows works and all those different operating systems. You have a basic knowledge of that. So in DevOps, you need to have an understanding of the infrastructure that is in place. How does the server work? What is the operating system the server is, standing on? Like, is it on Linux? Is it on Unix? And all those kind of things. So it is easier for you. So don't worry about that. Yeah. So you have you probably know how to script also. You know, a scripting language, and that is also going to help you. So don't worry, right? So scaling, what is scaling in this scenario? I'm not seeing any answers in the chat, so I'm assuming a lot of you know what scaling is, or you just haven't gotten the time to type it out. That's fine. Not blaming you. So scaling is basically, imagine when you're working, or not working, you have your own operations. You're running a food delivery service. You cater to 100 people a month, and you're pretty satisfied with it. You did not expect it to grow to 100 people, but you did get 100 people, so you're happy. But what happens is the next month, you see that 1,000 people are requesting to get delivery from your service, and you're not able to handle all those requests because you designed your system in such a way that it can only handle 100 people, right? Why did you do so? Because you only have certain resources and you can only expend those resources for what you think will happen. So you thought that 100 people will come and you expended resources for 100 people. Now you see the 1,000 people come. So you decide that, okay, now is the time to expand my services. So how do I expand my services? By increasing the number of servers and making sure a lot more people can access my delivery thing, right? So let's say Swiggy also does this. It used to be for 1,000 people, but then it became popular and then a million people started using it. So they had to expand their services. So this process of expanding is basically what's called scaling. You're scaling your operations, right? So that's what scaling is. So when you implement DevOps, you see that you're able to scale your operations much more easily. You're able to expand your operations much more easily. So that is another benefit of it. All right. So before I talk to you about the prerequisites there are, I want to answer some of the questions. So Gaurang is asking, hi, I'm a beginner to IT. Should I go for DevOps or data science? Gaurang, it really depends. See, I'm not going to tell you go for DevOps because DevOps is the best and I am selling DevOps. I am not selling DevOps. I am telling you what DevOps is. Maybe I am selling DevOps, but it's your choice. Data science is another very interesting field. DevOps is another very interesting field. If you like both of them, there are choices for you there also, where you can implement data science projects into DevOps. There is something such as that also. So you have a lot of choices. Please dip your toes in the water everywhere. That means, try everything out and see what you like. If you like infrastructure, if you like learning about Linux, Windows, and all that stuff, operating systems, how servers work, how's the internet working, then DevOps is your thing. But if you like to understand data, look at numbers, calculate from those numbers, get insights, then data science is your thing. I hope that answered. So Ashok, I hope I explained scaling well for you. So Mohammed is talking about scaling, the thing I asked him. Scaling is more like expansion, like the expansion of a business, expansion of software using different areas of companies or division. That's right. Mohammed is right. Totally right. Then we have Venki saying scaling is like reducing traffic, which comes to applications when users are increasing automatically increases server. Yeah, scaling is there. There's something called auto scaling where you don't have to worry about the scaling and you set the auto scaling where as in the requirement comes, you scale according to that. There's a whole auto scaling thing also. Ashok is asking, I am a C++ and Python programmer. Is DevOps beneficial for me? Yeah. DevOps is a good career choice. There are a lot of different career choices you can take as a developer. You can go into software architecture development, or you can go to that is software designing, and then you can go to DevOps also. You can go as a managerial head, but mostly you'll have to take one of these fields. So DevOps is a good place to go for you. Don't worry, it's a really good place. Since you know C++ and Python is good language because it's very versatile. C++ also, but I'm a Python guy. It is beneficial for you if you think you want to go in this direction, right? So let's look at the prerequisites to learning DevOps. All right, so these are the basic prerequisites. Anyone who doesn't know what DevOps is and wants to get into DevOps, these are the basic prerequisites. You need to know the basic Linux commands and you need to know basic coding. But it's okay if you don't know these, all right? I'm not saying that these are the constraints for you. And the 10-hour course that I have created on Great Learning is taught in such a way that you don't have to know these by default, right? I explain those commands also. When I'm starting to teach you guys about Git, I teach you what all the Linux commands do, right? And if you guys think, if you still think you're not able to understand, don't worry. We have a Linux course also. Go ahead, check out GLA, that is Great Learning Academy, and just type in Linux. And I have a course here also. This is Linux in Hindi. We're coming up with the Linux in English also, so don't worry about that. And we have it on YouTube also. You can go ahead and check it out. And I explain everything there is to do about Linux for the beginners, right? And basic coding, you learn it across, you learn it slowly. So you don't have to worry about that also, right? So the course is designed in such a way that you guys can check it out. Again, I'll ask the moderator to go ahead and, show you give the link for the DevOps 10-hour course. You guys can go ahead and click on it and check it out, right? And I recommend to check it out after this session because I can answer live over here. That is a video. Just remember that. All right, so let's move on. Let's talk about the different DevOps phases there are. So there is a lot of different phases. We have continuous development, we have continuous testing, continuous integration, continuous deployment, and continuous monitoring. So continuous development, what is continuous development over here? So continuous development is you basically developing the software continuously. You're not stopping. Now, when we talk about phases, like in Waterfall, the phases were linear, right? You did the first requirements phase, then you did the designing phase, then the implementation phase, then the testing phase, right? So you did it linearly. But in DevOps, you don't do it linearly. You do it all together. You are developing at the same time you're testing, at the same time you're integrating the whole process, at the same time you're deploying, at the same time you're monitoring. How do you do it continuously? Well, basically you first start linearly, and once you do it, the whole process becomes simultaneous. You have one team working on developing continuously, you have one team working on testing continuously, and if there's no teams, then it's happening automatically, right? So that's why we put the word continuous in front of it, right? So first you're developing, then the code goes to testing, then integration is a phase where you're integrating everything. So integration actually happens way in the start, where you integrate all the parts of software development. And once you integrate all the parts of software development, you start developing and testing. So what does integration mean over here? So integration means you take your developing part, you take your testing, and you join it together, where it happens automatically, right? So if you guys check out Jenkins video, I explain this a lot more in detail where I tell you guys how Jenkins does it. Jenkins is a very good integration tool and it allows us to do all of these things, right? So continuous integration is basically taking all the different phases and joining them together. Just understand that as that, okay? And continuous deploying is deploying your software. So once you've made your software, how do you give it to the end user? You give it to the end user by taking the code and putting it in a server that is publicly available. So if you're using AWS and you're putting your software on AWS server and you make it publicly available, then everyone can access it. So the YouTube that we are using right now, right, the YouTube streaming service, it is on a publicly available server. That's why we're able to access it on youtube.com, right? Otherwise, we would not be able to do it. Otherwise, it'll be local, right? So this is your deployment. You put it in such a way that it is available to the end users, right? That is your deployment. And the monitoring. Monitoring is the aspect where you want to get a feedback from your customers, from your clients, and from the different metrics there are themselves, right? So you want to understand what's going on with the software. So you monitor it. There are a lot of different monitoring tools that you can use, like Prometheus and Grafana are some of the popular tools, and there are a lot more tools. We'll talk about them, and you can use them to monitor your software, to monitor all of your DevOps lifecycle, right? Let's move on. All right, so let's talk about DevOps tools. All right, so the DevOps tools. So we have a lot of different tools being used over here, and I have a few questions in the chat. Let me just look at them. We'll answer that, and then we'll move on to the tools. All right, so we have Sarath asking, I am support with no development knowledge. Will this help? See, it's fine if you're from support background. That's not a problem. Like I said earlier, it doesn't matter what background you're from, you can always start it. But you should see that if you're interested in it or not. Because if you're not interested in it, then yeah, there's no use. If you're doing it for money, then I don't know, you might as well continue in support, right? But I get it. DevOps gets paid a lot more. DevOps engineers get paid a lot more. So again, that's your decision. But if you're asking me if you have the capability or not, you definitely have the capability, Sarath. You can start learning about development. You can start learning about DevOps, and you can move on to the DevOps role, right? But it's with all the caveat with all the other things that I've talked about before, right? All right. So I hope that helped, that answer. Zakul asks, hi, I have studied from CCNA, but haven't looked at global exam. Can I go ahead for DevOps? Zakul, to be honest, I don't know what CCNA is. Let me just do a quick search about that. Now, the same things apply to you also that I've told earlier. Okay, it's an information technology certification from Cisco. So if my understanding is right, you have knowledge about network routing and everything. Yes, if you are good at network, then DevOps is definitely the thing for you, because DevOps has a lot of networking stuff. Like you have to understand how the networks work, and if you already have a good knowledge about it, then DevOps is your thing. Yeah. Definitely. Or if you want, you can still give that global exam and, see if you get a job from there. If you don't, that's also fine. DevOps is also a thing for you. Hemant Bijay is asking, I have experience with software support. Can I join? Yes. As I answered to Sarath, you can also do it. You will just also have to, see if you're interested in it or not. All right. So yeah. Let's move on. Bhavarind is saying Cisco networking. Yeah, nice. Saw that. All right, let's talk about the DevOps tools. There are a lot of different tools. So first we have continuous development. In development, what we're talking about is writing the code and putting it to a repository. So you have a lot of tools like Git, Mercurial, Azure repository. A lot of you may know about Git. Git is a code repository. It's a place where you store your code, right? Why do we store our code? We store our code because we want to make sure that code is available to everyone, not just you. It's available online, and that code is version. You have one version of the code, second version of the code, third version, fourth version, and so on. Because then you can go back to your previous versions, and that way you have a history of how the code is being developed. That is important. Understanding how your code is being developed and where it is being stored and all that is also important. That's why we use repositories. So you have Mercurial and Git and Azure repository. All of these things do the same thing. They store your versions of your code, right? In continuous development, you have other tools also, like your integrated development environments, like IntelliJ, your PyCharm, Eclipse, any sort of tool where you write the code, right? And you use a lot of different plugins for it. A Visual Studio, that is also one. Yeah. Building tools. Now, I'm not going to explain building in this video. I think that is kept for another session, because building is a little bit big process. Just take this statement, keep it in your mind, that when you develop software, you don't take the code and publish it as a software. You have to take the code and you have to build it. When you build the code, You basically take the code and you add a lot of stuff to it. Your code is just a set of instructions that you're giving to your computer. Now, a lot of times these instructions will require resources, right? External resources like libraries and functions. So building is basically taking your code, taking all those libraries, those functions, and putting them all together in one single executable file. So your .exe files, if you played games, you'll see a .exe file. Or if you've seen a lot of other software, you see .exe file. Your .exe files are basically your build files, right? Or they're your executables. You can call them executables, you can call them build files, you can call them a lot of different things, right? So you have tools for that to build your tool, build your software. You have Ant, Maven, Gradle. These are for your Java projects. You have MS Build, which is used for your Microsoft projects. Node projects, a lot of those things. Then you have database management tools. You need to know how database works. So you have tools like MySQL, MariaDB, Liquidbase. All these are database management tools. Then you have continuous testing. You need to know how testing works. So you need to use tools like SonarQube. It's a static testing tool. It's like when you run your code in an integrated development environment, you see those errors, right? The code won't run if you don't type those, if you don't write it properly. You'll see warnings, errors. So SonarQube basically does that, but in a lot more advanced way. Then you have Selenium, PyTest, Catalan. These are dynamic testing tools that are used when your software is running for logical things, all those things. Then you have continuous integration. Now, continuous integration is basically, like I told you earlier, use tools like Jenkins, Circle CI, GitLab, Bamboo Teamcity to join all these parts. So you have continuous development tools, you have building tools, you have database management tools, you have testing tools. You take all of these things together and you put them together, right? So you have to join these things. So to you do that, you use Jenkins, right? And then you have deployment tools. So these tools are basically used to help you manage all your deployments. That's what DevOps tools are, right? So we have a few more DevOps tools. Let me just go through them. Let me do them one by one, don't get confused. There's configuration management tools. These tools are basically used to help you configure all of your things. You might be handling hundreds of servers. If you want to update all of those hundreds of servers, how do you do it? You do it by basically using one of these tools to update them, right? You can't do it manually. It will be a big task, and if you do it with the help of these configuration tools, it becomes a lot more easier, right? Then we have orchestration tools. So these tools are a little difficult to explain to you right now, but orchestration tools are basically tools that allow you to this is going to be another 5-10 minutes of explanation. Here's what. For orchestration tools, I definitely recommend you guys checking out my Docker videos. My Docker videos totally explain it, or my DevOps 10-hour course that also explains it. Now, I know a lot of you are beginners, so I don't want to confuse with orchestration tools. So let's move on for now. And please go check out that DevOps 10-hour course because that's where I explain all of these things in detail. Then we have artifact repositories. So artifact repository is basically a place where you store your artifacts or your builds or the executables. It's the .exe thing I was talking about. So if you want to store them in particular locations, you can particular location, you can make use of your artifact repositories like JFrog Artifactory, npm, Sonatype Nexus. All of these tools basically help you to store your executables, right? So that is your artifact repositories. They act like your code repositories, but they don't store code, they store those single files, right? There is a purpose for storing these also, and the purpose is that it makes development a lot more easier. You don't have to go back to your whole software itself to make code itself to make changes. You can just go back to the previous version of your artifact, so you don't have to go through the building process again. You just deploy your artifact as it is, right? So that makes it easier. Then cloud services, as someone asked in the chat, there are a lot of different cloud services available: AWS, Azure, GCP, OpenShift, Cloud Foundry, DigitalOcean, Alibaba's own thing, Alibaba Cloud. There's a lot of different cloud services, but I'll be honest, AWS is the big boy of all of these clouds. AWS has a lot of different services that you may not find anywhere else, except maybe Azure. Azure and AWS are like the top leading contenders in the cloud services department. But don't worry, you don't have to learn all of these again and again. Just know the fundamentals of a cloud service, and then you can move on to something else. Like if you know the AWS fundamentals, you can move on to Azure, right? It's not that hard. Continuous monitoring. So as I told you, you have to monitor your software, your whole system. How is it doing? You have to understand everything. You get your insights from the data that you're monitoring. So we have ELK for that. We have Prometheus, Grafana, Splunk, NagiOS, Google Analytics, right? So these are all the different tools that you use for monitoring. And last, scripting. So for scripting, you can use Python, PowerShell, Perl, Java, .NET, or whatever you have for scripting. Scripting is basically for automation purposes. Like if you want to automate a certain code or certain segment of something, then you can use a scripting language for that, right? So these are all the DevOps tools there are. Right. So these are all the DevOps tools there are, and that's it. Oh, that was a lot. Let me just see the questions you guys have. I don't think we'll be able to do the demonstration today because already crossed the time and I still have to answer questions. But let's see. I'll try to cover it. Okay. So Hemant Vijay is asking how much course fees. Hemant, it's completely free. You don't have to pay a single cent, right? Or a single paisa. You don't have to pay anything. Just go ahead and check out our YouTube video for DevOps 10-hour course. If you want a certification, there is going to be a DevOps course on GLA also, and it's going to be completely free, right? You don't have to pay anything for it. So don't worry about paying over here. Don't keep that away from your mind, man. That's not something you should be concerning yourself right now. Okay. And when it comes to DevOps, I will recommend you, check out all the free resources like Great Learning's own resources. Please go ahead and check those out first, and then think about getting a certification, right? Then Barbind is asking, I'm learning a lot from this training, understanding all these tools in DevOps. Well, I'm really happy. So this is a good, basic fundamentals for you. Remember, this is not everything. There is a lot you can explore in this. And you know what? I should come up with a session where I explain the whole, everything there is, right? There's a lot of things you can learn. And don't worry, it shouldn't feel like a big ocean for you where you're drowning. You slowly learn. You slowly start drinking from the ocean, and then you complete the ocean, or you don't. It's fine. That's also fine, right? Okay, then we see what else. Executable files. DevOps is different job or profile. I have a question related. Okay, go ahead, Pratik. You have a question related to DevOps. Please feel free to ask that. Yeah. Till you ask, I'm going to go ahead and explain who is a DevOps engineer. All right. So a DevOps engineer is basically a person who's responsible for designing and maintaining the software development pipeline. What is a pipeline over here? So if you guys have heard about how cars are developed, they're developed in one production line, right? Where there are robots coming from the side and, welding something, attaching the car chassis, doors and everything. So it's on a production line. You can also call it a pipeline. So in software development process, it's somewhat similar. You first have the developer coming in. He's putting in the code, and once he puts in the code, it goes ahead and the code gets built. Once the code gets built, it goes ahead, and then the tester comes in from the side. He tests the whole program, and if he thinks it's fine, then the whole pipeline moves forward, and then this thing comes in, the deployment phase where you're deploying the software, right? So it is again a pipeline. So a DevOps engineer's role would be to designing it to make sure that it fits together with the IT environment of the company that already exists, and to make sure that he maintains it, make sure that it is a very well made line, it does not break anywhere. So that is also important, right? And he also makes sure that the software is deployed properly without any issues. So that is one of his most important KPIs. His KPI is he needs to make sure the software gets deployed without any issues. If that happens, then he gets raises and he gets bonuses and all that. Anyways, that's not the point of it. Yeah, a DevOps engineer knows also how to he knows how to automate and write automation scripts. So again, I told you DevOps is about automating the whole thing. Like I told you guys about how cars are automated in the production line and all the production is automated. Even similarly, we want to automate the software development process also. We want to reduce the amount of human involvement and increase the automation aspect of it. So DevOps engineer should know how to automate everything, right? Integration is a process of automation. You're using Jenkins to automate a lot of processes. He also knows how to keep the whole infrastructure secure and robust. So you will need to know some security aspects here and there. But this is only when you become a proper DevOps engineer. Before that, you won't need to do that. So don't worry about this. And sometimes in companies, it won't be a role at all. You'll have network specialists and ethical hackers who do this, or maybe a DevSecOps person who's solely based on security aspect. A DevOps engineer has excellent communication skills that help him to convey ideas and exchange information between different teams. Now, this is very important because you need to be able to talk properly. You need to be able to convey your ideas, right? Hesitating or stuttering is fine. It's not a problem. It's as long as you get the idea across to the other person, you're doing well. So if you're going to DevOps, you really need to make sure that you have good communication skills, because as a employer, they will check your communication skills. So before they get you in, right? It's somewhat of a leadership role also, not exactly, but you will need to know how to communicate properly, because you'll be interacting with so many different teams. You'll be interacting with DevOps teams, the the infrastructure team, the operations team, the networking team, the business side team. So you'll be interacting with a lot of these different teams. And if the company has more products, then the teams of all those different products also, right? So you need to make sure you have good communication skills. And on a daily level, a DevOps engineer is responsible for making sure scaling needs of cloud are fulfilled. Now, that is something more complicated than auto scaling. Optimization, managing permissions, and documentation. So all of those things, right? So this is what a DevOps engineer basically does. Now, what is the wealth of knowledge he needs to have? Now, a disclaimer, as a beginner getting into DevOps, you don't need to know all of these things. Don't get scared, all right? But this is what you will have at the end of your learning phase, or at the end of your career, right? So as a DevOps engineer, you'll know all of this, but not at the start of it. So don't get scared. This is the end of the thing. You'll know Linux, you'll know Windows operating system, you'll know database technology, you'll know server technology, you know orchestration, you'll know cloud technology, you'll know source control, continuous integration deployment, you'll know automation, you'll know scripting, you'll know networking, you'll have excellent communication. So all of these things will come to you when you get into the field, when you start learning about it, and all of those things, but not before that, right? You start off with basically almost not knowing any of these things. If you know these things, it's a good plus, but you don't have to know them to start, because you will be learning all of these things. All right. I hope that was clear. All right, so let's come to average salaries over here. So average salaries are very good for DevOps engineers. You have a lot of different variations. These variations can depend on a lot of different things, like the company that you're going to be applying for. It can vary from which company you're applying. If you're applying for a startup, they may pay a lot more, but then again, depends on the startup also. If it's a Lala type startup, then you won't get a lot of money. If it's like a proper startup with funding and everything, you'll get a lot of money. And if you're going for one of the FANG companies like Facebook, Amazon, you'll definitely get a lot of money. But it really depends from company to company. And it depends on the job role also. You might not get the DevOps exact role, but you will get some of the things that a DevOps person does. Like there's something called site reliability manager. Then there is associate roles that are not exactly the same thing, but they overlap, and people are ready to take you even those overlapping roles. But the salary might change, right? The country where the job is important, because the standards of living matter a lot. So if you are in Bangalore versus if you're in Mumbai, you'll see that the salary is being differed a lot, because in Mumbai it's harder to live. Or a better example is India versus US and UK. Because in US the standards of living is much higher than in India, and that's not a complaint. That's it's actually better if you get a DevOps role in India, because you get paid a lot more versus the standards of living, right? Then the city the job is in, again, as I told you, Bangalore to Mumbai. If you're taking US, you can take any rural city versus California, any city in California like San Francisco, right? And how well you negotiate, that is again depends on you, how well you're able to negotiate for your salary and your skills, obviously. So these things matter, and you will probably get a salary around $1,000 and up if you're in US and all. And in India, you're definitely to get 7 lakhs and up salary. But again, there's a caveat behind this, that this is for DevOps engineers, not for junior DevOps engineers or associate DevOps engineers or interns. They will not get the salary. I'm sorry to tell you guys that, but it is something to aim for, right? You just don't start off simply like, oh yeah, I'm going to get into the job and I'm going to get so much money and all. It's not always that easy. You have to work your way up, right? So that's all right. Just start with a junior, associate level, or internship. You gain all of the experience that you need, and then you go for these things. And if you have some background in coding and if you're already working a job that requires this, I would recommend this. So if you're a software developer or a QA person or in the operations team, I would recommend to go ahead and talk to the people who do the DevOps stuff in your company. If you already do the DevOps stuff yourself, then that's great. But if you don't do it, if you just do one specific thing, if you work in one of those MNCs like TCS and Cognizant and all those Wipro, then you'll have DevOps specific DevOps teams over there. So I want you to go ahead and talk to them, make friends with them, and get mentored by them, learn from them, right? That is again a point of experience for you. This is for people who already work in such companies. If you work in a non-technical background, even then you can go ahead and talk to the technical people, right? It's not a barrier, right? All right, so these were the average salaries. Now let me look at some of the questions. Sadly, we won't be able to do the demonstration today because I have to set it up, and I went in slowly in theory and answering questions for you guys. But again, the DevOps 10-hour course, I do all these things in very detailed way. So you can just go ahead and watch that video instead, right? This is just for you to begin form a framework, but this is where you learn all the meat or the mean stuff. And to be honest, again, that 10-hour course is not everything. You still will need to learn a lot more. But it's a good starting place and it's going to be very easy and smooth for you. All right. Okay. Now, before I do end this session, I want you guys to go ahead and give me any questions you have. We have 5 minutes extra. So I will take those 5 minutes extra just to answer any questions you guys have. So please go ahead and put them in the chat below. I already have some, so I'm going to start answering. While I'm answering, I should definitely see some questions. And also, guys, one more thing. If you really enjoyed this session, right, please give me a like. Please give this video a like. And if you think it's going to help someone else, please give it a share. And subscribe because we have a lot more sessions like this. If you want it on DevOps, we will have more sessions on DevOps, but we do have sessions on other things also. I'll explain this a little bit more detail once we go through all the questions. But do give me a like. I see right now we have 53 likes. I mean, I want to see 100 likes because that really helps me out and that really helps people, help this video reach to other people also. Okay. So let me see the chat. We have a lot more questions. Let me start answering them. So we have Pratik saying, I have 4 experience in digital marketing and want to switch to DevOps. All right, Pratik. Let me ask you this. Why do you want to shift to DevOps? That is the question that you should be asking yourself also. Is it about money? Is it about job satisfaction? There's a lot of different things that there can be, okay? Now you're saying you have 4 years of experience in digital marketing. That is not a problem. But if you already have a job, I will not ask you to quit the job unless you have some financial support for yourself. Maybe if your parents are supporting you in that, or if you have a spouse that is supporting you. If you have that kind of, financial support, only then I would recommend you quit your job and start learning. Even then, it is difficult for me to recommend you to quit your job, right? So don't quit your job. That is not something I would recommend. Just learn it while you have your free time. It's not always easy, I know, but this is a decision for you to make, right? I can just help you out. You can switch to DevOps. It's not a problem. You will need to know a lot of the basics here and there. Yeah, so there will be a lot of things that you need to learn, but slowly learn them. Yeah, it's not a rush. You already are doing well for yourself. Just slowly learn these things, and once you want, you can make the switch. Cool. Go through the 10-hour course that I've made for Great Learning on DevOps. It will really help you out. Okay, so Venkatesh, you're saying I'm a software testing engineer. How is this helpful? How is this course helpful in current role? So Venkatesh, it's definitely helpful for you because you are a software tester. You are the closest to this particular field. So generally, I don't like to say this, but testers are the ones who go for the DevOps roles. Yeah, software testers are the people who definitely get these kind of roles, right? It's not just for them, but obviously it depends on your skills and everything. Why am I saying it's for you? Because testing is pretty close to this thing, and you already have a lot of experience, so it's going to be easy for you to shift, right?
Pratik is asking, is it mandatory to learn programming languages like Python, Java, and so on? No, it's not mandatory. Just if you have a lot of list of languages, just learn one of the languages. Like Python is in itself enough, right? Okay, so let's move on. Harish is asking, is someone is from server networking domain, which would be better, DevOps or AIML? If you're from the server and networking domain, I would recommend DevOps. Yeah, yeah. But I don't want to constrain you. If you like AI and ML, you can go for that also. But it's easy to get into DevOps. I hope that helped answer your question, Harish. Kalicharan is like, I'm already scared. Don't be scared, man. I mean, I get it. Life is like this. You get scared of things you want to go into. But you'll get through it, man. You'll get through it. Baby steps. Remember that. That's the most important thing. Baby steps. Don't look at the big sheet of things you want to learn and get scared. Look at that one first step that you have to learn. That is watching the video, the 10-hour course, right? In that also, watch the first 30 minutes or watch the first 1 hour. That's it. You don't have to watch more than that. Maybe watch it later, tomorrow, or day after. Then, you can learn more. Hey, Babarinder is saying that he's already subscribed. Thank you. I hope you'll enjoy more of my sessions. Thank you so much, Surya. Well, likewise. I like when you guys give me the thumbs up and everything. It helps out. Sir, most growing programming language. I can't answer that, but I would say Go. Go is the most growing language. I think you should Google that for a better answer. If you're a Java developer, then it's not a problem. Just one, you can shift into a DevOps engineer role. Even developers can shift into you. So I've said it earlier. People with coding background have it easier, right, to shift into these things because they already have some experience, right? I would recommend talking to your teams that already do this in your company. Okay. Or if you're not working, that's also fine. Just watch the video. I want to do any project in Java and C and Python. That's really good. About Bihar, you can just go ahead and Google that thing. I don't have any exactly idea. Just do a project in something you like. It has to be a passion of yours. Only then will you succeed. That's one thing that I've learned from my own experience, that if you do things that you really like if you like cricket, or if you want to build a better software for someone you're trying to help, then really helps. You should have passion for that project. Just don't pick any project. Just think about it. If you really like it, then do it. Abbas is like, any project idea about DevOps. So project idea for DevOps is like I told just one, pick up pick up a software. Like let's say you want to deploy a website. So pick up a particular website that you want to make. If there is code for it already, that's really great. If you want to develop the code for it, that's not a problem. That's also fine. Just take that particular website and try to make a software pipeline around it, right? So how to do that? You can go ahead and watch the 10-hour course. You need to integrate the testing tools. You need to have the integration with Jenkins or whatever. I would recommend open source tools because they're free. You don't have to pay anything for them. And monitoring tools. Monitoring, you need to attach monitoring to it. So that could be a good project, right? Just try to deploy a website. Can be any website. How much time it would take? It would take, it depends on person to person, but I would say it would take to get a DevOps engineer job. I cannot say. I really can't say, because getting a job, especially in this market, it's a little difficult. But if you put in the effort, you'll get it. It depends on person to person. I don't want to give you a specific time limit for that. DevOps, I would say 1 month to get the basics, 6 months to get advanced level at it, and 2 to 3 years or maybe 4 years to get really good at it. Yeah. Saifullah saying, I'm from mechanical engineering background. Okay, there's a lot of questions. So guys, I'll quickly answer these because our time is totally running out. Saifullah saying, I'm from mechanical engineering background. Can I jump to DevOps? Yes, you can. Just go rewind to all the things that I've said earlier. Abbas, I'm currently on a certificate DevOps from Great Learning. Right now, we don't have a course, but I would definitely recommend you subscribe because we will be promoting the free course that we have on Great Learning. So wait for that. Or if not, you can just go ahead and watch our 10-hour course video. Certificates aren't everything. It's the skills and projects that you have on your resume. Okay, to get a job off campus, Shubham, is a little difficult, but don't worry. For DevOps, actually, it's better to get it off campus. You don't get on campus DevOps jobs. Internships, associate and junior level jobs. These three things you need to concentrate on. Cold apply, go to companies, look at the career pages, apply from jobs from there. All right. And also Naukri and Monster and Indeed. PR. So many tools for DevOps. Which branch to select? Choose the open source tools. All right. In the 10-hour video, I go through only the open source tools. You don't have to pay for them. All right. Would you upload mind map for DevOps? Yes, Kalicharan, I have talked about it. Now that I'm thinking about it, I definitely should do that. All the things that you need to learn, or maybe in one of the community posts, or maybe as just as a video for you. All right. Ashish is saying you're learning Python basics. That's really nice, Ashish. I hope that you succeed. Great workshop. Answers much more clear now. Thank you. I'm always happy to help. This is the kind of things I like seeing, that I'm able to help people, right? Do we need experience in any field to start a career? It's preferable if you have experience, but it's not mandatory. It's experience, yes. Sorry. Yeah, experience you will need. So you need to start from the internships, from the junior level jobs. Okay, only that's how you get internships. I'm so sorry, but this is how it is, right? You don't get directly the job because it's a big role. You have to manage a lot of things. So don't directly get this. Jasmine saying thank you for your best information. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching. I really enjoyed this. And again, I want to tell you guys about Great Learning. Please check it out. Free courses in anything you want, IT and software, on networking, ethical hacking, a lot of different things. If you're into designing and video editing, we have on those also, data science, and we have both in Hindi and English. Okay, so again for Linux, people who want to learn Linux, we have Linux in Hindi. You can go ahead and check it out. बहुत अच्छा course है. आप लोग बहुत like करेंगे, ठीक है? And thank you so much for watching. My name is Ram, and this is my first face video. So I hope you really enjoyed my face. I grew out my beard just